Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 2, Shloka 47. Shri Krishna says, O Arjuna, you have right to work only and not to the result or the fruits of your work. He says, never let the fruit of your work or the result be your motive, and never let yourself get attached to inaction. This is the doctrine of karma. We should never run away from our duty, but perform it in the best possible way, but without thinking or having any expectations about the result, because the result is not in our hands. The best way is to dedicate our work to God and accept the result as His grace or will. Shloka 48. Shri Krishna says, O Arjuna, perform your duty remaining established in yoga, giving up all kinds of attachment and unconcerned about success and failure. This equanimity or evenness of mind is called yoga. Here yoga means karma yoga, and established in yoga means to perform all our daily duties as worship of God with God's help only and without being concerned about success and failure. Shloka 49. Shri Krishna says, work done with attachment or expectations is far inferior to work which is done without attachment or any expectations, and this is also called Nishkama Karma. He says, O Arjuna, perform desireless actions with equanimity or evenness of mind. Miserly who work for rewards or for results are always wrecked. Shloka 50. Shri Krishna says, the person who wisely practices karma yoga without attachment can get rid of both bad and good karma or bad and good reactions in their present lifetime itself. He says, therefore, O Arjuna, strive for Nishkama Karma, which is the art of working skillfully or in proper consciousness. Shloka 51. Shri Krishna says, the wise who are endowed with equanimity of intellect or evenness of mind abandon attachment to the fruits of action, because the attachment to the fruits of action binds one to the cycle of life and death. By working in such consciousness, they attain a state which is beyond all suffering. Shloka 52. Shri Krishna says, when your intellect crosses the mire of delusion, you will acquire indifference to what has been heard and what is yet to be heard. It means after practicing karma yoga, when a person is able to come out of the deep darkness of delusion, he becomes indifferent to what has happened in the past and what is yet to happen. Shloka 53. Shri Krishna says to Arjuna, when your intellect ceases to be perplexed or allured by the fruitive sections of the Shastras or the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, and remain steadfast in divine consciousness or ecstatic concentration, you will then attain the state of perfect yoga or an union with the Supreme Being. Shloka 54. Arjuna says to Shri Krishna, O Keshav, what are the characteristics of a person who is in divine consciousness, or whose wisdom is steady and who is also called a Sthita Pragya? How does an enlightened person of steady wisdom or a sthita prajna talk? How does he sit and how does he move? Shloka 55. The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna says, O Parth, when a person renounces all selfish desires and cravings of the senses that ruffles the mind and is fully satisfied with his mind fixed in the self or the Atman, such a man is said to be transcendently situated with steady wisdom or a sthita prajna. Shloka 56. Shri Krishna says, one whose mind is not troubled amidst misery, one who does not hanker after pleasures, and the one who is free from attachment, fear and anger is called a sage of steady wisdom or a sthita prajna. Shloka 57. Shri Krishna says, when a person remains unattached under all circumstances, neither does he rejoice in good fortune, nor does he get dejected or depressed when facing adverse situations. Such a person is a sage of steady wisdom or is a sthita prajna. Shloka 58. A person who withdraws all his senses from the sense objects, as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, is firmly established in divine wisdom. Shloka 59. Shri Krishna says, a person may withdraw or restrain his senses from the objects of enjoyment. The taste or the longing for the objects of enjoyment remains in the mind. But when he realizes the supreme or the ultimate truth, this longing in the mind is also removed. Shloka 60. Shri Krishna says, the senses are so strong and turbulent that they can forcibly carry away the mind of a learned person or a person endowed with discrimination and who is trying to practice self-control. We sometimes see that even learned and wise people cannot control their anger, jealousy, greed and so on, and act in such a way that is not expected of them. Shloka 61. The Supreme Lord says, they are in perfect knowledge who are able to keep their senses under control and their minds ever absorbed in me. It is extremely difficult to keep the senses under control, but becomes possible when the mind is kept constantly absorbed in bhakti or in the devotion of God. Shloka 62 and 63. Shri Krishna says, when one thinks constantly about the objects of sense enjoyment, one develops an attachment to them, and this attachment leads to an intense desire. And from this desire arises anger. Anger leads to clouding of judgment or delusion, which results in loss of memory. And when memory is lost or bewildered, the intelligence is destroyed. And when intelligence is destroyed, or there is buddhi nasha, one is completely ruined. Shloka 64. Shri Krishna says, one who controls the mind and is free from attachment and aversion, attractions and repulsions, even while interacting with the world and moving around the objects of sense enjoyment, is not affected by them at all, and thus attains joyful serenity and peace by the grace of God. Shloka 65. Shri Krishna says, By divine grace, when a person attains peace, all sorrow and suffering which is caused by an uncontrolled mind and turbulent senses comes to an end, and the peaceful and pure mind of such a person soon becomes firmly established in God. Shlokas 66. Sri Krishna says, an indisciplined person who has not controlled his mind and senses can neither have a steady intelligence nor can he meditate on God. And there is no peace for the one who cannot meditate on God. And how can a person who lacks peace be happy? Shloka 67. Sri Krishna says, just as a strong wind sweeps a boat away from its course on the water, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can lead the intellect astray. The five senses, that is touching, seeing, smelling, hearing and tasting, are so strong that even only one of them can influence the mind in such a way that it can lead the intellect away from the right path. Shloka 68. Sri Krishna continues to describe the characteristics of a sthita prajna, or a person whose wisdom is steady, and says, O mighty armed Arjuna, one who has restrained his senses from the objects of sense enjoyment is firmly established in transcendental knowledge, or is a sthita prajna. Shloka 69. Sri Krishna says, that which is day for all beings is the night of ignorance for the self-realized sage, and what all beings see as night is the day for the enlightened sage. For an enlightened sage who lives in the self, this material world is an illusion. Whereas for a mundane person, this world is the only reality, as he is totally ignorant about the real self or the Atman. Shloka 70. The incessant flow of waters from rivers are merging into the ocean continually, but the ocean remains absolutely undisturbed. Similarly, a self-realized sage remains unmoved by the flow of desirable objects all around him and attains perfect peace. The person who strives to satisfy desires never attains peace, because there is no end to fulfilling desires. Shloka 71. Sri Krishna says, the person who gives up all desires moves around the world without any material cravings, devoid of the sense of proprietorship or the sense of I and mine, and free from false ego, means perfect peace. Shloka 72. Sri Krishna says, after attaining enlightenment, one is never again deluded, and being established in this consciousness at the end of life, one is freed from the cycle of life and death and attains liberation or moksha. Jai Shri Krishna.